I mentioned earlier that I'll be speaking to Don Walker. Don has served as part of our chaplaincy team at Wesley Mission for the past 15 years. Has made the decision now to retire from that role. Retire in the sense of retiring from paid work, but isn't necessarily giving up his concern for the gospel and for caring for people. When you're a person of faith, that's always important. Welcome, Don. It's nice to talk to you. Don, you've been working for 15 years at Wesley Mission, which is not an insignificant period of our lives when you put it together. And I know that you will have come and seen hundreds of people's lives affected by the work that we do. Now that you're stepping down as a chaplain, having worked in that place, how did your journey begin at Wesley Mission?
Well, I'd been serving overseas in the country of Liberia with an international mission. And because of civil war there, we came home to Australia, and I got involved in the sort of ministry of going out to different churches and telling people the needs over in Africa, the various countries, as well as South America and Asia. And I was feeling a little bit, it's time to take a break. So I told my wife, I'll take 12 months off. And at the time, she was looking for a job for my son in the paper, and came across this little ad in the paper which said they needed someone at Edward Eager Lodge, the homeless hostel run by Wesley Mission, for an administrative assistant. And as I had, in my background in the police force, done secretarial work to superintendents and things like that, as well as when I come back from Africa, I did a business administration course. So I said, I might as well apply for it. And I got the job and started at Edward Eager Lodge. And then as I did that, the Olympics came along in the year 2000. I was asked if Wesley Mission had got a contract to do some homeless work at Yagoon or in a boarding house there. So that boarding house became part of Wesley Mission, and I helped to, I was actually running that for a while. And so that built up, and then I was asked if I could become full-time, so I did. And
so this part-time job became a full-time?
Yeah, my part-time job became full-time. I always believe God uses what you've done in the past to prepare you for future ministry. And then a little while later, I moved on into chaplaincy.
In this particular area at Wesley Mission, have you got people in your mind, particularly that you've been able to help, or we've been able to help as a mission? And you say, they're people, and that story will be one that will live with me for a long time.
Yes, we have a number of people who come through. Sometimes it's like a revolving door. You see them 1 year and you don't see them for a couple of years. But there was one couple that came along whose whose child had only been born with half a heart. And so they were both living at Edward Eager Lodge at the time, but because they weren't a married couple at the time, they had to live on different floors. The child was born, they knew the child was going to be very sick, but they said they wanted to trust God through this. They didn't want to take the child's life, they wanted to give the child a fighting chance. And the child was born, the child did die, and I was privileged enough to take the funeral and to have some long-lasting influence in their lives. And they've now had a little girl who's about 3 years old now, and it's lovely to think back on that in that position I was able to help them by going to Westmead Hospital and just being on that journey with them, a journey of faith caused by difficulties.
And the great thing is that many people who are homeless are just like any other person. They need support and help. Yeah. Tell us what motivates you in the work.
When I was first interviewed as to whether I would go into the chaplaincy role, I was asked a question about what makes you feel that you're called by God to work amongst the homeless. And I said, I don't feel I am. I'm called to work with people. And I think that's what Jesus did. We don't read about Jesus standing on any high pulpit or anything. He got down. He was actually called a drunkard and a glutton because he sat around with people around meals, getting to know them. And I think that's one reason why that the religious leaders were drawn to Jesus. They knew he had the truth. He sat amongst the people.
So that's important for you. Then finally, importantly, what sustains you?
I think what sustains me is the sense of my own personal faith, but seeing that God can use me in all sorts of different circumstances, whether in my private life or particularly with my life within Wesley Mission, getting alongside people and accepting them for who they are, their status in life or their situation in life, just being there and being a listening ear and not bring them into my own world, but rather listening to their world.
Don, hang around with us till the end of the show, if you will. Thank you so much for your time at Wesley Mission. We want to wish you well for whatever the future holds. I know some of it is going back to Africa. I know some of it is going to be catching up with friends. Now, Don, just before you leave, if someone was sharing in our conversation, what's the one thing you would say to them about their calling? If it was to work alongside the needy, the disadvantaged, whatever term we want to use, if somebody has a call in that area, what would you say to them?
Well, I think everyone has a call. We can't say I'm not called. And I think in the book of Corinthians, the Apostle Paul says, who's adequate for these things? And the answer comes down a few verses later, and is that God makes us competent, God makes us adequate. And I feel that that's the way God's led me in life.
And if it's somebody going to work in that area, is there one thing you'd say that you ought to be aware of this? What would you say to them?
That the person is just like you, only in their circumstances a little bit different, but accept them as you would want yourself accepted, because that's what Jesus told us.
Thank you, Don. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. And all of us, as Don, I'm sure, has reminded us, all of us are just one step away from a place that may be a very difficult place. And so we don't stand above people, we come alongside them.